next up, we have Fred from Alpic. Fred, you're going to be going in a slightly different direction, I think, than Hans talk. And Han talked a little bit more from the sort of vibe coding only direction of building these apps. I think you're going to talk a little bit more about sort of, a more developer-centric view of how to build and deploy MCP apps or ChatGPT apps. So welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. I know this is your second time on. It kind of seems like whatever December is, it's the month of second timers. So exciting to have you back, and thanks for joining us all the way from Paris. I know it's late in the evening your time.
No, it's okay. Don't worry. Thanks for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here for the second time. Can you see my screen okay? Yeah? Everything's fine?
I just brought it up. Yeah. The floor is yours, my friend.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So yeah, for those who didn't have the chance to catch the first time I was on the show, my name is Fred. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Alpic. And we basically have a hosting platform for MCP server and ChatGPT apps. But today I'd like to focus with you on ChatGPT apps and more specifically on UI and the new framework that we built called SkyBridge to help builders, people with developer skills to build a ChatGPT app. So this will be indeed a little bit different from the talk previously from Han. We target a slightly different audience of people that write code with a coding agent and without. So you will see code in this demo, but stay along with me, and I hope I will bring you on board and developing new ChatGPT app. The two killer features that ChatGPT released in this new platform, and you were having the conversation with Darren just before, that are really game changer for me, I think, are first, the zero-step discovery, the ability to add a specific brand to bring it inside the conversation, whereas other ecosystems of app have previously been known to put together a central registry, asking for people to browse through this central registry for existing apps, install them before being able to use them. This zero-step discovery within the conversation by invoking the brand, and even sometimes OpenAI is still a bit blurry about that, bringing in some additional brand if it's relevant to bring them inside, is going to make sure that the distribution of those apps in the ChatGPT ecosystem is going to be really skyrocketing through the roof. This is part one. And part two is the UI, obviously. A lot of the existing agentic conversation were lacking features that native web and mobile UI were used and known for in terms of density of information and ease of control. Bringing back UI into conversation really complements well the assistant chatting with you, and is going to be one of the two main aspects why I believe this app ecosystem is going to thrive. Everything I'm sharing today is related and will be demonstrated on ChatGPT. But as some of you may know, a few weeks ago, the MCP protocol was officially extended with MCP apps, an extension of the protocol that supports UI as well. That is slightly different from ChatGPT app, but behaves the same way and relies on the same principle. The first problems that we have with the current ecosystem that drive us on building a new framework called SkyBridge was when OpenAI released back in October 2025 the Apps SDK, which was the framework to build apps. The problem with releasing this Apps SDK back in October is that if you take a look at the documentation of Apps SDK, you'll find out that there is not a single line of framework exported from this software development kit. And this gave us the idea at Alpic to maybe try to implement the missing pieces and primitives explained in detail into these guidelines that OpenAI brought, in order to make it easier to manipulate and build things with a package name conveniently SkyBridge, which for those of you who might know is the name of the runtime that OpenAI built to bring UI within the conversation. The second reason we wanted to start building a framework to help people build apps was the new challenges that were brought by this new paradigm. Like Darren was saying, we are at the verge of a new entrant in the space. Web in itself was a way to, web and mobile was a way to get user on a large desktop and get user on a small device that they have in their pocket, and they are very different in terms of usage. One thing that is going to be very different for ChatGPT apps is going to be the dual interface space. You have both at the same time visual information and textual information. As a user, when interacting with ChatGPT, with apps inside the conversation, you will see UI and you will read conversation and write text to the model. This dual interface in itself brings a lot of value, but also brings a lot of challenges. First one, to make sure that what you do with those two interfaces are complementary. Don't say textually what you are showing in your widget, and synchronized. Make sure that when you do something on the widget, the model is aware of it if you continue the conversation, and vice versa. So we built SkyBridge, and SkyBridge is an open source framework that you can find on GitHub that is a full stack TypeScript code base to help you build those new ChatGPT apps. And we are actively working on supporting MCP apps as well inside the framework. So building once with SkyBridge will allow you to bring new app to the ecosystem inside ChatGPT and inside new upcoming clients like Claude that will support MCP apps. The change we are mentioning, the set changes I was mentioning are part of the key guidelines of why we built SkyBridge and what value we want to bring with this framework. So we want to make sure that as SkyBridge is a development tool for developers, that we can expect from it all the features of a modern development environment. We want to make sure it's type safe from widget to server tools from tools to widgets. We want to make sure it's in sync always, and we want to bring convenient API to developers that are familiar with, especially in the React ecosystem, with some accustomed to some very classical API that we are lacking at the moment, both on the ChatGPT interface and the MCP interface. It's very easy to start a new project with SkyBridge. You just need to clone our starter repo with this command and start the project after installing its dependency. It comes with two main packages. One on the server side to extend your existing MCP server API with a new API, which is called the register widget, which allows you to define a tool and the UI that comes with it. And on the website, on the front-end side, it gives you convenient tooling and hot module reload for you to have a convenient way of developing apps. Everything is available in a detailed documentation that you can go through in order to find out all the small API and details of SkyBridge. But what better way to make you better understand why we developed SkyBridge and what you can do with it than showing you a quick demo. So specifically for this talk today, I built, using SkyBridge and using Claude, a small ChatGPT app aimed at helping me discover new capital city around the world. And I will start to use it right away. So I will start with one I'm very familiar with, which is basically my city, my hometown city. At the moment, the ChatGPT conversation I'm showing to you is connected to my local environment, so to the code editor that you see on the left that is running the app. When I asked him to show me Paris, basically he responded with a small UI widget embedding a map. If you're curious about it, the map is brought by Mapbox. And it showcases the capital city I'm looking for inside the center of the screen. As I was saying, the idea of SkyBridge is to bring all the features of modern web development inside your development environment. So I'm currently working on this application, and I want to make some changes to it. If you've been working a little bit with ChatGPT app before, you know that this is not a very fun thing to do. Every time you do some changes, especially if you started building using the examples from OpenAI official GitHub repository, every time you do changes on your widget, every time you do changes on your tools, you need to restart your processes and you need to re-register a new application to ChatGPT in order to have those changes seen and shown in the UI. Here, I don't need to. So let me show you what happens if, let's say, at the beginning of my tool call, I want the map to always be centered at latitude 0 or longitude 0. Like you've seen, I just make changes in my code base, and those have been reflected right away in the UI. And the UI is not a copy from OpenAI ChatGPT, it's the actual ChatGPT. I am on chatgpt.com at the moment. It's just that this server is connected to my local environment. And whenever I do changes in the code base, the changes are reflected right away in the UI. So if I say I want to start the map initially at latitude 48 and at longitude 12, for example, which would be, I guess, somewhere in Austria, the changes are reflected right away in the UI. And this, as a developer in 2025, is the very first important thing to me, is to be able to see right away, when I do a change, the impact of this change live in an environment that is as close as possible to my real production, to avoid discrepancies that may occur if I'm looking somewhere else. We managed to do this kind of features through something called hot module reload using Vite, which is basically an existing development server for front-end application that we conveniently packaged to make sure that ChatGPT rendering UI is using this hot module reload from Vite served within SkyBridge. So every time I do a modification, it's shown in the UI. And the one I can do that is the best one for my use case here is, of course, to center the map on the requested capital to make sure that when the user is asking for a capital, the map is already centered there. So now I have a development environment with hot module reload. Very nice. Every time I do a modification, I don't need to reload anything. I don't need to wait a long time for the changes to happen. I can see them straight away. Now let's make some additional changes. So I will go full screen on the map here. I have developed inside the application a small side panel when I'm in full screen mode to have additional information about the city I'm looking at. And now I want to develop the feature where I can change capital. I can at the moment select another one, but you see on the right, the panel is not updating at all with new information. When you develop ChatGPT app, every time the user interacts with the UI, you can emulate what would happen if the user had interacted with the chat instead, in order to not have to start fresh from a new widget every time and directly call tool from within the widget to render the exact same UI that you would have had if you had continued the conversation on the textual side. In order to do that, you usually require quite a lot of boilerplate to use directly the tooling made available by OpenAI. But in SkyBridge, we tried to make our life as easy as possible and reducing the quantity of code that needs to be written in order to achieve the exact same feature. This both improves the development experience if you're a developer manually changing code, but it also improves consequently the capabilities from a coding agent like Claude or Cursor or any other ones, or even the one from Fractal, to output better apps because you have a bigger density of token. You don't need as much token to express the same feature in output if the APIs that you provide are well designed. And one that we designed very well was to provide ways, easy ways for developers to do additional tool calling within their widget. So here, for example, I want to use the same tool that was used to generate the initial rendering of showing one capital every time the user is clicking on one of them. At the moment, whenever I click on a capital, the only thing I update is my state saying which capital is selected, which allows me to highlight the capital. But the data that is used to generate the right side panel is not fetched again from the MCP server that is containing the detailed information about the capital. I can do that by simply using a tool that we provide through SkyBridge, which is called useCall tool. And this tool will output a simple API for me to make additional tool call. I call this tool call travel to. And when I'm clicking on the capital, no, I don't want to just update the state. I also want to travel to the capital. Traveling to the capital is going to basically provide this data through the data parameters that you see here. It's an API that is very similar to a React query for those of you who are already work with this tool before. And I can easily update my capital data to be either my initial tool call or the data that is outputting from the tool call. If I don't make a mistake, it's better. Last but not least, I have a way to easily get information whether the tool is still pending, and I can update my loader to take into account the fact that I might still calling a new tool. So now when I click on London, you can see my right pane is waiting for my tool call to complete. And when the tool call will be complete, and I will get information about London, I will have information about this particular city displayed on the right panel. And I achieved this navigation on the UI with just 6 lines of code, which is very nice always to have to write less code. Before I give back the stage to Darren and to Shannon, I want to demonstrate one last feature. If you remember well, here at the beginning of my exchange with ChatGPT, I was asking for information about Paris. And let's say as a user, I tried going through a few different cities. And the last one I want to go to, jumped one, but if I go back to London, the last one I went to is the one different from the initial tool call that rendered the UI. If I ask which is the country this city is from, inside the conversation, which I can do at any time because I can jump from UI to conversation and from conversation to UI. So you have to remember in terms of flow for your user that this can go from one to the other. When I do that, and I don't have anything explicitly said in my application, the model is still thinking that I am in Paris. It said that Paris is the capital of France when I ask in which city I am. But I just selected London. So it's strange that the model is not aware that as a user, I changed from Paris to London. And this is because what's happening inside the UI is not proactively feedbacked back to the model. You need to say what you want to the model to have in its context when you are doing stuff on the interface. It's quite hard to do with the current API provided by OpenAI. So we built a better tool to encapsulate this complexity. And this tool is basically an HTML attribute. So every time you're rendering a piece of content on your app inside your widget, you can add this parameter, which is called data LLM, which will automatically be forwarded back to the model without triggering a new inference. So you won't see any part of conversation taking place, but it will allow the model to be aware, to be notified whenever there is this node rendered in the widget of the content of what you say. So here, for example, this node that I'm looking at is the node responsible for displaying the right panel. And I want to add a new data LLM attribute on this node, saying that the user is currently viewing the capital for this new capital and giving all the context that I received from the tool call inside the context so that it knows what I'm looking at. I will display this one and I will start a new conversation to show you this. So add local, show me Dublin, for example, to change a little bit.
Fred, while we're waiting for this, I missed how you added @local into your dev environment in ChatGPT. How did you do that?
Exactly like
I see. Just added as a private MCP. You basically generated it and then added it.
Yes, exactly. When you start SkyBridge, you have a URL that is shared with you. Let me show you. You have a tunnel URL, that is the one that you have here when you start SkyBridge. And it's this URL that you paste into ChatGPT to have your local environment inside ChatGPT.
Got it.
I didn't change before, and I didn't come back to that. Oh, yes, I did. Okay. Well, didn't take into account my latest development. Things happened, like the demo god are not always 100% with me. But if I ask now, if I change the city and I go, for example, into London, so I only changed the quantity of information I want to feed back to the model. So now when I'm showing the information about London, despite having first initially asked for Dublin, now if I ask which country is this city part of, with this additional bits of information of the data LLM, the city is part of the United Kingdom. And now the model knows that I have navigated from Dublin to London. And it will allow my user to feel seamless navigating between the UI that I provide with a few interfaces to make navigation easier. I wouldn't imagine navigating from city to city text-based. So it's very convenient to use a widget to do that, but still be able to ask questions to the model whenever I feel like it, because I don't want to read the full description of London and I want to ask the model, but I want the model to be aware of the context of navigation that I had until then. So developing SkyBridge application, developing ChatGPT and MCP apps with SkyBridge is much easier because we provide high-level tooling that reduce the quantity of code and boilerplate code that you need to write or that your coding agent need to write. And we also provide API to make sure that when developing those new apps inside this new paradigm, you think about stuff that are very specific to this new ecosystem, like sharing context to have synchronized navigation, be complementary always, and of course, have easy to access API. If you are interested in SkyBridge, you can grab the QR code that is here to go to the open source project. You can read all the documentation that is inside the SkyBridge project as well. We have a lot of issues and contribution from the outside community as well. If you want to contribute to SkyBridge, you're more than welcome to do so. And I hope SkyBridge will help you in your journey developing ChatGPT apps. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any question, I'll be happy to try to answer them to my best abilities.
So I just wanted to ask, just technically, like the way you are syncing the context for that data LLM is like, how are you technically actually doing that? I was just kind of curious.
There is an API on OpenAI that allows you to set context, basically, if you know the API, it's called the set widget state. It's an API that allows you to persist information in a JSON format in ChatGPT, so that when you come back to the conversation 2 weeks later, this state will be brought back inside a widget in case you want the UI to reflect all the navigation that the user did. But in addition to persisting state, all the state that you persist is also passed to the model. So if you are careful about what you persist into the widget state, you can make sure that the model is always aware of just the necessary information corresponding to your navigation. The API that they provide is very programmatic. So if I was using the window.openai.setWidgetState, I would have every time I render something to think to myself, do I need to programmatically call this API or not? What we did with the data LLM attribute is reversing the problem. We said, you can write data LLM attribute everywhere you want in your application. Only the ones that are rendered are going to be combined together and sent to the model. So every time you have a re-render in your application that shows different things, all the data LLM attributes that are everywhere are combined together and put together in the context window of the model to make sure that you have information to display to the user and you have information to feed the model about what is displayed to the user.
I had no idea that the widget state was exposed to the model. That does actually I mean, I'm assuming that's documented somewhere, right? Do they say that? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I was not aware of that. That's beautiful, because I like the way you point out that, like, when you're writing these apps, there's different things you have to consider, because you have the user looking at UI plus what is AI aware of. And that's one of the big things that we've noticed, is, kind of that idea of synchronizing those two things and maintaining that context is essential. I really like this. This is interesting, these two different talks, because they're kind of coming at from two different approaches, where we have kind of like, let's vibe code this thing. It's super easy, kind of no code approach. And then you're going much more kind of traditional engineer, developer, web developer technologies and stuff. And I think there's kind of open space for both of these, because definitely if you're going to be, because with these vibe coding things, it's like, okay, the existing companies today, all the big companies that are already in the ChatGPT app store or whatever, they're not going to vibe code. They have engineers. They're going to use, they already have a tech stack. They have whatever. So it's like, these type of highly technical or frameworks and stuff make sense. But also point out, these nuances that you're saying. It's like, oh, you need to, how do you track state between this and this, and yeah. So I think it's it's very slick, very, very slick what you've done. And
I can't wait to try it. Honestly, I think it looks really good. I actually think that just looking at the docs, it looks like you've documented it pretty well. I'm sure you used some AI to help with that. But I actually was thinking, I think you could very easily pull that into a context and vibe code against it, and probably see, given the live reloading and everything else, you could actually see a very cool. I think there'd be a lot of interesting things you can do that. So
yeah,
very.
The app I was showing is one I developed this afternoon with Claude. Just one shot, one plan with him, and you giving him the full context of SkyBridge and the starter kit that I showed at the beginning of this conversation. And he did all the app, and I basically had to comment out stuff that I wanted to show during this show in order to bring them to life one by one to show you what it can achieve.
Even just vibe coding it was able to leverage the real-time relookup and actually use some of those capabilities that are in there. That's really nice.
It's amazing as people bring in these new frameworks, brand new thing like SkyBridge or whatever, is it's because you're building on top of things like Vite and React and it's like it already knows so much, and then you just have to tell AI, like, here's just a little bit of additional context or information. So the delta of what you have to tell AI to be able to effectively program this stuff is very small. Like I've been amazed with Remix 3 as I've been fooling around with that, because it's a project I've been watching, brand new, whole new thing. But AI does a good job of vibe coding it. You just need to give it a little bit of context of, like, this is how it's slightly different from what you already know.
True.
But I had one question: is what is for SkyBridge? And maybe you mentioned this, but I kind of didn't. Is how does this work with MCP apps? Is this just 100% ChatGPT specific?
The demo that I just shared with you is only going to work on ChatGPT at the moment. We are actively exposing the new way to also make it work into an MCP app ecosystem. Basically, what we do is very similar to the polyfill you used to add in web development for years to make sure that this line of code behaves the same on Internet Explorer, Chrome, and Firefox. So basically, we are polyfilling the code that we generate from SkyBridge to make it run as well on ChatGPT app and on MCP app without you having to maintain two code bases for those two ecosystems.
So you guys released this, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Fred?
Officially, yes. We've been working a little bit on it since 1 month, I would say, mostly, but we released last 10 days, I believe.
Well, congratulations. It's really impressive. It looks really good, and it looks like you guys are heading in an interesting direction. And any support for this yet in the Alpic cloud? Can I work on one of these? Do you have a deploy to Alpic where the whole thing can deploy it there?
Yes, of course. Your starter kit is a GitHub repository. This is what is going to be provisioned when you initiate a new project. You can go on Alpic and select the repositories that you just created to start building, and it will deploy automatically on Alpic. You don't need to do anything.
Look at that. All hosted and everything just for you. Very cool, Fred. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for as well, if you're still with us. I just wanted to thanks everyone who's been joining us. We had another great turnout today. Unfortunately, we've got even long. Once again, we've gone long. Darren, we were so good for the first like 20 episodes. I don't think we ever went over an hour. Now it's like we see
getting longer. Sorry.
An hour. So
yeah,
shame on us. I will get my New Year's resolution will be to keep us back on schedule. And,
good resolution.
All right, everyone. Thank you again. Thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you to the audience. It's been amazing. Darren, thank you for co-hosting this all year with me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Nice holidays. Bye-bye.